This world can be a dark, lonely place. It's easy to lose your way. The light from your dreams becomes harder to chase. The words won't come, you don't know what to say. When we come together, the storms we can weather. Don't let go of me, we'll get through this, you'll see. Like pictures from the past, we were meant to last. There's nothing we can't do when we come together. United we stand, divided we fall. This is the battle cry that unites us all. Come with me, let's show what we can do. We can't do it without you.
Hey everybody, welcome in, welcome in. Welcome to Conversations with Christy. Let me mess around with this. I'm going to do, oh no. That's not what we wanted to do. I wanted to make it so we were both big on the screen, but I don't, maybe is it this? No, that's not it either. Well, I need to quit messing around with stuff. Well, that's okay. I can see the comments here, so so we're good.
You can also mess
Guys,
with it after we get started a little bit too. That's fine if you want to.
right. No, I mean this is nice. Let's see. I think it looks good. I've got any chats showing up over here. So all right. I'm just afraid there's gotta be a way. Well, I'm not gonna mess with it because I might end up ending the live stream and I don't want to do that.
Don't want
Just
that.
gonna leave it.
No, this is important
why
stuff
Christy
today.
right. This is why Christy doesn't play with her phone when she does. So, you guys, I am so excited about this. This is the 2025 year look ahead, and I have encouraged everybody, Karina. I'm like, if you only watch one show this whole year, please watch this one so that we know what to expect, what's going on. It has been, I gotta adjust this light, guys. It has been a big day for us here on the channel. Our tarot class dropped. It's not too late if you want to get in on that. Head over to Magic of the Moon Astrology. We've got all the options over there. And yeah, so what can we look forward to in 2025? I'm going to let you just kind of talk us through this. I hope you guys, I got my notebook and my pen all right here.
That's basically what I did too, Christy, only I did it, 3 or 4 days ago, basically setting everything up and taking notes for this session. And I'm making personal notes in my calendar as well, just like, hey, these, here's when the energy, is more favorable. Here's when it gets a little crunchy. There is so much to say about 2025. It was hard for me to dial it down to a manageable amount. I'm going to be really honest. There are some years where none of the outer planets change signs. But this year we have Neptune changing signs, which it does about every 14 years. Uranus changing signs, which it does every 6 to 7 years. Saturn changing signs, which it does every 2 to 3 years. And Jupiter changing signs. Jupiter does change signs about every year. And this is all on the heels of Pluto just having changed signs into Aquarius in November. So yeah, for those of us who have felt, I have definitely felt this way, like it almost feels like the shift of an eon or an epoch or something, like the energetic shifts just feel so strong. It really kind of is. It's not common that Pluto changing signs would also align with Uranus changing signs and Neptune changing signs. So we're not dealing with one energetic shift. We're dealing with all of these outer planets moving at the same time. One thing that's important to note is Pluto is basically like, we saw the tail end of its move into Aquarius in November. It started moving into Aquarius a year and a half ago, and then it kept retrograding back and forth, between
Right.
Capricorn and Aquarius. And each time it retrograded, it would come back and get a little further into Aquarius before it would turn around and retrograde again. So, what happened in November of 2024, Pluto moved into Aquarius for good. So we are done
Mhm.
with Pluto and Capricorn. None of us will see that in our lives. It's going to be another 220-ish years before that happens again. So we are done with that. Congratulations, we all survived.
Right. We made it.
Take a moment. Take a moment. Um,
Right.
so with Pluto as this outer planet that changed signs, we're at November was the very end of that, and now we're just in Pluto and Aquarius land for good for the next 20-ish years. The other
Oh,
outer
wow.
planets that are changing signs in 2025, we are at the very beginning of their changing signs. So Pluto at the very end, all of the other outer planets at the very beginning. So we have all of the outer planets changing signs for the first time into this new sign in 2025, but they will all retrograde back into their old sign before the end of the year. So, what that means is with Pluto moving into Aquarius in November of 2024, that was like the final closeout of Pluto and Aquarius. So, a lot of us
Mhm.
experienced some big shifts in our lives, some big endings, new beginnings, new perspectives. It felt a little bit like closing the chapter and pivoting to a new chapter. With the other outer planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, this is more like the preview. This is more like the movie trailer where we
Okay.
watch the 2 or 3 minute trailer and we're like, okay, I don't see everything, but I'm getting the gist of what this is going to look like. And then all of those planets are going to retrograde into their old signs later in the year. And so we have this really interesting preview energy of what's coming. And a lot of this hits around the second quarter of the year. So between March to about June, July, that is like the hot spot of the year. And everything else is sort of building up to that or coming down from
Huh.
that.
I was
So,
wondering that because I did some year look ahead tarot readings, and I will just say that starting in March and through like September, that was really when people had some stuff going on. And I told everybody in the little clips that I sent them, I was like, this is just so you know, this is common. And I would tell everybody, I don't know. The astrology Karina is not let me in on the secret of whatever it is. Like, I don't know, but I am so interested to see what you had to say about that because it was literally, and I think I read for like 7 or 8 people. It was literally every person. And it was like
yeah.
this like tarot does. It was like this build up to this story, and you've seen the build up,
Mhm.
and then you kind of seen like this crescendo, and then you've seen it get resolved, and then you've seen the opportunity for the lessons. But it was this arc that just was in everybody's reading, and it was especially strong around June, July, August, like May, June,
Mhm.
July, August. And I
Yeah,
was like, all
that's
right,
that.
you guys, I want to know, like, call me when this is done, shoot me a text to be like, okay, this is what it is. So,
Yeah, I mean,
very
that
interesting.
sounds very, yeah, like it's tracking with the energy. And it is important to remember too. And I always feel like this is important when we're talking about general energies for the whole year ahead. These energies, even though they are common energies, they will hit different people differently. So, for example, if some
Right.
of these outer planets are moving on top of your sun or on top of your moon, the natal position, the birth position of the sun or the moon for you, some of these energies might hit you way more than they hit other people. Some people might feel the Neptune in Aries crazily strongly and not a lot of other stuff. Other people might feel the Uranus and Gemini. Whoa, that's really strong. So all of this always, what we're kind of doing is we're talking about the broad weather, the energies of the year ahead. However, it doesn't say anything about each one of us as individuals. For example, maybe it is going to be, in general, a crazy rainy year. In the Pacific Northwest, that probably means, we need rain boots and umbrellas and, all kinds of gear. But a really rainy winter in Las Vegas might look pretty different. It might look
Right.
much drier because it is a different climate. It's kind of starting from a different base
Mm.
energy. So while it is true that all of us as a collective will feel these energies, we will feel them in varying intensities. And yeah, we won't all feel them in exactly the same areas of our life either. And a lot of this is based on your
Right.
birth chart. And yeah, we won't go into every individual person's birth chart here. So just kind of setting that as the stage, that 2024 was really a year of finishing up everything Pluto and
Mhm.
Capricorn. And there were quite a few other things that happened there as well. But yeah,
Mhm.
2025 is not a year of finishing up. It is the opposite of that. It is the year where we get the trailer and we see what's coming, but we don't know all of the fine details yet. But we probably know enough to know if we want to go see the full movie. So um,
Okay.
we'll have
Okay.
that sense of, okay, we'll have a sense of what our challenges are going to be and what our opportunities are going to be and how to best work with those energies. Um,
Mhm.
so, um, Already starting January 3rd, Venus moved into Pisces. Friends, this is just an amazing placement for Venus. Venus is exalted in Pisces. Um, Especially coming off of some of the heavy energy in 2024 and then moving into, some pretty new previews for some new movies of our lives in 2025. This Venus in Pisces is really just a rest and a little bit of a break and
Mhm.
a chance to re-engage with our creativity. Venus in Pisces is incredibly creative, especially
Yes.
regarding sort of the collective. So it may be personal creativity, but often it's also making art and creations that can be shared with others. Because Pisces is so much about that universal consciousness. We all are a collective. And so there will just be a flowiness to our intuition, our creativity, any of our inner energies, sort of wanting to come out, come to the surface, be shared with others. And Venus is so relational and values interacting with others. So, yeah, there will be the sense that maybe not only are you writing poetry, but you're sharing it with some of your friends and, turning art into a communal relationship building experience. So Venus
I
is in
love
Pisces
that.
until February 3rd. So everybody, please, even if you're busy and running from one thing to another, try to take some time outs to reconnect with yourself because, yeah, intuition, creativity, our own inner passion and joy, we'll be able to connect with that more easily over this next month.
Right. And I have seen a lot of connection with my creativity. I mean, it has just been flowing out of me.
Oh,
So
that's
I
perfect.
I love that. So, and I want to encourage you guys to journal around these different times so that you know how they affect you. Maybe this is your first soiree into this and you're like, Venus, Pisces, I don't know. I don't know what that means for me. Um, that's why we really encourage you to journal about these things and to really pay attention, because when it comes back around the next time, you'll be able to be like, oh yeah, I remember I was very creative at that time and getting a lot of things done, which I am. Like most of you that know me know I am a huge procrastinator. I am on it. I'm like, I'm done. I'm getting this to you today. And like, and it's there by the end of the day. It might be
Yeah,
10 o'clock at night, but you still have it by the end of
you've
the
been
day.
sending me a bunch of stuff, Christy. Yeah, I can attest personally to your strong creativity right now.
Yeah, and it is just so, this is good. And this is why we encourage you to do this. And if you do pick up that gratitude journal, there is a spot in there for that weekly journal where the moon phase and the astrological events. So that would be a great place to write down what's going on, and then the journal prompt, and then there's enough space in between there you could write how it's affecting you, so that you can go back and take a look
Mm,
at that, because that's how we know. Until we really get into the energies, we can say, well, it looks like it would be like this for you, but you don't really know how it's going to affect you, and what areas of your life.
mhm.
So yeah, I, I think I think that's great. Yes. So any creative thing you guys do, share in the Facebook group. Let us know.
Yes, yes, this is such a beautiful time for all of that energy. And again, yeah, sharing it. With Venus there, it is not just about creating it, but sharing it and using it to build deeper relationships and communities. Um, on January 11th, so less than a week from now, the moon nodes change signs. The moon nodes change signs about every 18 months, about every year and a half. And so they have been in Aries and Libra for the last year and a half. And the moon nodes are always 180 degrees opposite each other. So if you see one in the zodiac, you can look right across the chart, exactly opposite, and the other will be there. So the north node has been in Aries, the south node has been in Libra. We talked a little bit before about what the nodes are. We'll probably talk more about that in a more math oriented uh, YouTube live this year. But they are moving from Aries and Libra to Pisces and Virgo. And for those people who are familiar with the zodiac, you might ask, why is it going from Aries to Pisces instead of from Aries to Taurus? Taurus is the next sign. Well, the moon nodes always move retrograde. Always move retrograde. I mean, no, there's true node and mean node. We're not going to deal with that. For all intents and purposes, the
Right.
moon nodes always move retrograde. So we have a lot happening around this Aries Pisces boundary in 2025. The moon nodes are the first thing. We will talk about more things. Whenever any planetary body, moon node, asteroid, whenever they change zodiac signs, there's for sure an energetic shift. However, when we're
Mhm.
going from Aries to Pisces, we're going from the first zodiac sign to the last zodiac sign. So this is a more jarring energetic change than a lot of them. And again, because the nodes move retrograde, it isn't even like we're going from Pisces to Aries, last sign back around to the beginning to repeat the cycle. We're starting at the end of the cycle, and then we're circling back around to the very beginning of the cycle. So it's a little bit of an odd energy. It's almost like you're reading a book and you're reading the last chapter, and then you finish the chapter and you go back to the start of the book. It's just like that's a little
That's
bit
what
of
I
a
do.
weird, jarring. Yeah, is it really? You are gonna love this energy. Then you're gonna be right there. um,
Be like, yes.
and so, one thing that's important to realize is that wherever the moon nodes are, that's where eclipses happen. So, as we have the moon nodes changing from Aries and Libra, that we have been getting Aries Libra eclipses over the last year and a half. Eclipses are now going to move into the Pisces Virgo axis. Um, and Aries and Libra this past year and a half has been so much, all of these eclipses have been about us versus others, our power in
Mhm.
relationship versus others' power, how much we want to be our authentic self versus how much we're willing to compromise to be in relationship, in communion with other people. Many of us have faced a lot of challenges there around, coming face to face with Some of our relationships may not be super healthy, whether that's with family members, friends, significant others, um, kids. We've kind of been running into, oh, yeah, this relationship isn't quite healthy. And a lot of us have made like big changes based on that. So that's been a
Mhm.
huge focus of the last 18 months because Aries is about me, Libra is about me with others. And wherever the nodes are on these opposite ends, they kind of tend to fight. And I don't mean fight in a bad way, but it's almost like a tug of war where they are each on opposite
Mhm.
sides of the zodiac. And the Aries side is pulling and saying, me. And the Libra side is pulling and saying,
Yeah.
no, harmony with others. And so it just feels a little bit like, we have an inner like tug of war going on. As the nodes move into Pisces, Virgo is very detail oriented and perfectionist. Pisces is very universal cosmic consciousness. Virgo wants to fix the lawnmower, and Pisces wants to fix the universe. And so we can sort of get the feel of what that tug of war is going to look like. Part of us will want to do the detailed things required in our three-dimensional life. But then another part will be like, oh, why am I wasting time with this? I should be doing my soul work and, moving my soul forward. Who cares about the lawnmower? The lawnmower can take care of itself. And so, we're going to move into this realm of the push and pull between the small details and the giant picture, and the push and pull between the three-dimensional world and the esoteric spiritual world. So the
Right.
good news for people who are tired of dealing with relationship power dynamics from the last 18 months is we're going to get a little bit of a breather from that, and we're going to move into a
Right.
different form of tug of war. And it's going to be interesting to see exactly the form this takes in our collective consciousness.
Mhm.
I think even things like in the US, for example, there have been a lot of concerns about inflation and the economy. That all feels very
Right.
Virgo, very down to earth. How much does bread cost? Um, but at the same time, there really are people who are, concerned about collective consciousness, social awareness. We had a very heated US election. Countries around the world are having heated elections where they're thinking about bigger picture things and big policies. And so I feel like we're already starting to see a little bit of that. It's like, well, there are policies I care about. I also care about how much it costs to buy bread, and
Right.
sort of, how do I balance these two?
Yeah, exactly. And I want to say too, guys, I love working with the nodes. North node is what you are here to do. South node is what you bring with you into this lifetime. So we are going to do some work this year on the nodes, specifically looking at them as math and then looking at them as what do we do with them? Because
Mm.
my north and south nodes were in Scorpio and Taurus. Is that right? Scorpio and
Mm.
Taurus. A few
Yes.
years ago, and guys, my life just blew up. Like that was a year where I had things happen that I was like, what in the world? That was actually the very first time Karina ever did a reading for me, because I had some stuff going on, and
That's
she's like, you
right.
know what? Let me give you a chart reading, and I was like, you know what? At this point, I will take anything. Somebody but for those of you that are going through those nodal experiences, we want to be there to help you. So, working with this energy can be really, really profound. And when you understand that, like going backwards from Aries to Pisces, you're going from fire to water. You're going from like infancy to, if you're looking at the zodiacal wheel as life, you're going from infancy to, making your final preparations and preparing
Mm.
to, cross over. So those are very different energies. So, if you want to learn more about those, I promise we're going to do more about that. So we'll talk about the math of it. We are going to do a math show for everybody out there who wants the math show. But we are also going to talk about um, what these are. And so those will both be coming later this month. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, I'm very excited now that I understand what the nodes are, what they do, and now that they're not affecting me so personally and directly.
Yeah.
When you kind of go through that, you can help other people though through that, and you can be that, okay, all right, hey, you know what? This is karmic.
Yeah.
This is your mission.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I love that you called that out about, yeah, and I just checked your chart, and yes, you do have your nodes in Taurus, Scorpio. And so for people, the nodes basically come back around to the place they were in when you were born, um, about every mm, 18, 19 years. And so you'll have what's called a nodal return, and the nodes will come back to the positions they were in when you were born. And those do tend to be very karmic times. So if you do have your nodes in Pisces, Virgo in your birth chart, you would either be having a nodal return where the north node comes back to the north node position, south node comes back to south node, or maybe a nodal reversal where the north node comes on top of your south node and the south node comes on top of your north node. And we can talk at some other point about what those the different energies look like. But certainly anyone who has nodes
yeah.
in Pisces, Virgo, the eclipses are coming soon to a sky near you. So you will be extra activated by the eclipses happening over the next 18 months. Okay. So on January 30th, so the end of this month, Uranus has been retrograde. It's going to go direct at 23 Taurus. This is the last retrograde Uranus has before it moves into Gemini. So it's been in Taurus since, I want to say, 2017-ish. So yeah, it's been that 6 or 7 years. So it's always significant, it has Uranus, all of the outer planets do a retrograde once a year. That's not abnormal. But it is significant that this is, on January 30th, it will not go retrograde again until it's moved into Gemini. So there is a sense of, okay, we're starting to move towards the new energy. We're not just going to keep moving back and forth over those late degrees of Taurus. And as we'll talk about as we get into the outer planets, one thing that is just crazy to me is not only are all of the outer planets changing signs, but they're all moving from very very passive yin kind of receptive signs to very active, driven yang signs. So we had Pluto moving from Capricorn, which is an earth sign, more yin, to Aquarius, air sign, more yang. And then we'll have Uranus moving from Taurus, earth sign, yin, to Gemini, air sign, yang. And then we'll have a couple other planets moving from Pisces, water, yin, to Aries, fire, yang. So not only are planets moving signs, and not only are all of the outer planets changing signs, but they're all changing signs from passive yin signs to very active outward facing signs. So if there are areas where we felt sort of stuck, like we just keep spinning our wheels, we can't really get traction. It's almost like we're just playing the same video on repeat over and over. The good news is that as these outer planets all shift from yin signs to yang signs, there's a sense of like, okay, let's go. Aries, for example, not going to wait around and be stuck. Aries is going to move forward no matter what. Gemini, Aquarius, same kind of deal. So this will be, as we have Uranus stationing direct, we can almost picture Uranus as a figure. It's been moving retrograde. It stops. It turns around. It sees Gemini on the horizon, and it's now moving towards Gemini. And there's almost this sense of like, is it still in Taurus? Yes. But Its eye
Mhm.
is now fixed on Gemini. That's the next place it's going. It's not going to turn around and go back until it hits Gemini. So there is, January 30th is when we'll first start to feel some of that shift to the more active energies that we'll see later on in the year. Um, okay. Then I'm just from a time perspective, I want to make sure I'm still in January. So just making sure I pull out just the most important things. There are some things that happen. I feel like the next most important thing that happens is February 23rd, Mars stations direct at 17 Cancer. For those of you
Yeah.
who have been following along, we've been in Mars retrograde for what feels like forever. And Mars retrogrades,
Forever.
they take like 6 months. It's 2 months of them going into their shadow period, 2 months of them retrograding back, 2 months of them going back through their shadow period.
Yes.
It's the longest
Yes.
retrograde cycle of any of the planets. So it can just feel painfully slow and stuck. Um,
Yes.
and Mars is not, it doesn't love being in Cancer. Mars is exalted in Cancer's opposite sign of Capricorn. It's in its fall in Cancer. Cancer is nurturing and kind and empathetic and tactful. And Mars is like, go, 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 let's go to
Right.
war. And it's like, those are not really compatible energies. And we talked when Mars first went retrograde about how Mars in Cancer kind of looks like that protective mama bear energy, which is great. But we need to make sure that there actually is a threat to ourselves or our cubs. When Mars is sort of going through this retrograde shadow period, we can mistake the enemy and sort of go in all ready to attack on someone who isn't even our enemy to begin with. And we just kind of misunderstood the situation. So for sure,
Right.
over these first several months up through April of 2025, it's important for us to really think about who the enemy actually is before we just go in there, ready to defend, hearth and home. We may not have chosen the correct enemy.
Right. Right. I did
And
mention that this
yeah,
morning. I was like, be mindful, guys.
this is definitely a time to be mindful. And then the next really big thing that happens after Mars stations direct. So at that point, we are done with Mars retrograde. Again, congratulations to us for moving through that. But Mars still has to go all the way back through its shadow period, all the way past the stuff it's already retrograded through. So it has to get all the way back through Cancer, out up through the first 6 or 7 degrees of Leo before it starts entering new territory and is fully past retrograde. Let's see, what is I want to say, I'm just checking the exact date of our first eclipse. So the first eclipse it is going to be a lunar eclipse on March 14th. And that will
Mhm.
be a total lunar eclipse. Total versus partial depends on how close the sun is to the moon nodes. So this is happening very close to the moon nodes. So this will be a total lunar eclipse. And this will be in the late degrees of Virgo. So if you have anything going on, Virgo, Pisces, late degrees, this will definitely be hitting that. All of the eclipse energy is focused around seeing things we can't normally see. We think about the eclipses, and either the light of the sun or the moon is hidden from us. And we're sort of forced to
Right.
use other senses. We can't use our normal eyes if everything is dark, where it's normally light. And so we usually get really good revelations, epiphanies
Mhm.
during these times, but sometimes those are disruptive. If we've kind of been on a trajectory and things have been feeling pretty comfortable, and then we get a pretty big epiphany that we need to go in a different direction. So the eclipses do tend to bring endings and new beginnings based on these revelations and epiphanies that we get. And
Right.
this will be our first lunar eclipse, I think, in Virgo. So Yeah, this will be a new energy we haven't felt in a while, 18 or 19 years.
So I have a
Um,
question. Mindy
yes.
is her sun sign is in Virgo. And I did her chart. But I don't have it in front of me because I don't have it that close. But she was asking, so because the nodes are going to be in Virgo and these eclipses are going to be in Virgo, even though her nodes, I'm like 1,000% positive, are not in Virgo, Pisces, it's still going to affect those people who have these things passing over their sun, correct? And it's going to affect them because sun is, like, it's how you present to the world, it's who you are. So even though you might not have, and I think this is important, even though you
Mhm.
might not have these specific placements, if you are a Virgo, if you are a Pisces, this will affect you. Um, so just like my Pluto isn't actually like in Aquarius, but because I am an Aquarius, it's going right over my sun, and it is really, and you guys, I'm feeling it. So I want to say too, even if you know nothing else and all you know is your sun sign, if you're like, ooh, they're talking about me, really pay attention these next 18 months because it is fixing to amp up for you. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you made that call out. Yes, this is not just going to affect people who have nodes in Virgo, Pisces. It's more like, if you picture your birth chart and you picture, maybe having a north node in Virgo, maybe also having a sun in Virgo, maybe having a moon in Virgo. As the nodes as they move over those points, no matter what is there, you're going to feel something. But the quality of what you feel is going to depend on what it's hitting. So if it's hitting your nodes, there's going to be a really strong karmic element to whatever happens.
Mhm.
And if you've sort of strayed off of your soul's path, the universe is going to bring you right back and be like, you are not on your path. You
Yeah,
are here to do a mission. Like the nodes going on top
right.
of the nodes bring us back to our path. Um, or
Right.
sometimes help us have some new epiphany such that we can sort of take a step up this ladder of our path,
Mhm.
take a step forward on our path. If it goes over your sun, the sun really represents ourself in this world, in this lifetime, our ego, sort of the authentic core of who we are. And so typically when the nodes go over the sun, there are big shifts in the way we view ourselves. For example, maybe we always viewed ourselves as an extroverted person, but all of a sudden we're
Mhm.
realizing it takes so much energy for me to talk to all of these people. Maybe I am kind of introverted. So there tend to be these really
Right.
big, or like, maybe you've always told yourself, oh, I'm terrible at math. And then, the nodes
Mhm.
pass, or the node passes over your sun, and you're like, actually, I'm pretty good at this. It
Right.
brings
Right.
these new revelations about ourselves. If it goes over our moon, we typically have revelations around what fulfills us, what satisfies us. So maybe we thought that, oh, if I just get here, I get, I don't know, this job, this house, I'm going to feel
Mhm.
fulfilled. And then the nodes move over our moon. It's like, actually, that's not really working for me. So if the nodes move over anything of yours, you will feel it. But yeah, the quality of what you will feel depends on what it's moving over. Yeah, that's such a good call out, Christy.
I'm getting better at this whole astrology stuff, y'all. I look at
You
it now and
are
I'm like, oh,
just
I know what that is.
yeah, you are killing it. You are like the best astrology student, learning by leaps and bounds. So one other thing that's really interesting this year, which doesn't typically happen, is both Venus and Mercury go retrograde right around the same time and right on top of each other. So it's almost like, they're both moving forward and they're roughly on top of each other. And then they both start moving backward together. And then they both station direct again and start moving forward together. So it's like they're holding hands while they do their retrogrades this year. So just super interesting. Again, this doesn't typically happen. So March 1st, Venus stations retrograde at 10 degrees of Aries. Then 2 weeks later, March 14th, Mercury stations retrograde at 9 Aries. So 9 and 10 Aries are where Venus and Mercury station retrograde. So starting in March, um, retrogrades are not times to move fast. They're times to like look at, evaluate. With Venus in particular, there's going to be evaluating a relationship component of your life, an artistic component, some type of expressive component. And Mercury is so much about communication and travel and other perspectives. So there may be ways in which we are, seeing cultures in a new way. Maybe we go on a trip, see the way some other people live, that changes our perspective. But yeah, with both Venus and Mercury retrograding at the same time, over the same degrees of the zodiac, early Aries back into Pisces, there is this sense of, okay, it's a time for new perspectives. So there will be some really valuable things that come out of this. And this won't have the same feel as Mars retrograde. Mars retrograde is like, oh, it's just hard to do anything. It's like wading through mud because Mars is that planet of movement. So this is not like we can't move forward, but it's more like we can move forward, but it's still important to make sure we have the right map. Otherwise, we may go very quickly, but not get where we ultimately want to go. So it's a time when we can move forward, but check your map to make sure you like where you're going.
There you go. I like that.
What's also interesting is we talked at the beginning about how much is happening over this Aries-Pisces boundary. These retrogrades of Venus and Mercury also happening over this Aries-Pisces boundary. So they're at 9 and 10 degrees Aries when they station retrograde, and then they go right back into Pisces, and then they'll station direct in Pisces and come right back through Aries again. So this boundary, the last few degrees of Pisces, the first few degrees of Aries, anyone who has any planets, anything whatsoever going on in those last 5 degrees of Pisces, first 5 degrees, maybe even 10 degrees of Aries, it's just like this year, everything is happening there. You will feel it. You will feel it. So it's, and with Venus and Mercury stationing retrograde in Aries, and Aries playing such a big theme in the energy of this year, that is the energy of the warrior. That is the energy of, working towards and fighting towards what we believe in. There are just some amazing things about that energy. But Aries energy can come in really hard and hot. And so it is important. I think all of us will feel like we're ready to hit the ground running. We have our map. We know where we want to go. And it will be really easy to bulldoze people without even realizing it with this strong Aries energy. So really important to use the energy to move forward. But again, Aries just doesn't have that awareness of how they come across. They're typically so the Aries energy is single-mindedly focused on their goal and just may not even realize what's happening around them. So it's a good time, starting around March, to just give some grace to other people. If they come off a little obnoxious or annoying, they might not realize that. They may just be single-mindedly focused on their goals. And then hopefully for each of us, making sure we are thinking about how we're coming across and aren't just, steamrolling over people in our path to our goals without even realizing how we're coming across.
Right.
It's very interesting energy.
I love it. Well, I'm glad you're pointing out all of this about Aries, is because, I don't think anybody intends to be that way, but if you have this universal energy and then kind of packed with, like, you know, Aries, Aquarius could be really some tricky energy, right? So
Yeah.
it's good to know. Um,
And it's powerful.
yeah,
You know, it's very powerful, which I
yeah,
think, especially for those of us who, yeah, have felt kind of stuck with all of the yin
uh-huh,
energy. I think this is just going to
yeah,
feel so great. You know, it's almost like I'm sort of getting the visual of like a dog who's, you know, been walked on a leash for the last year,
uh-huh,
and then they get taken to a dog
right,
park and the leash comes off and they're
right,
just like, I can run everywhere, and they run around like crazy and then like inadvertently knock over a bunch of people because they're just too joyous, too happy to be moving and making progress and
yeah,
not
yeah,
realizing, you know, who they may be, what other dogs they may be knocking down. So, yeah, it's a very powerful energy, really the perfect antidote to some of the stuck yin energy. But yeah, we want to be a little conscious of how we move forward. And
right,
then towards the
right,
end of the month, March 27th, March 29th, on those 2 days, Venus and then Mercury retrograde back into Pisces. So we get
mm,
another taste of that Venus in Pisces, which we love. Venus is exalted in Pisces. You know, as we
yeah,
talked about, we have that now really strong creative energy. So,
right,
some really good continued opportunities for creativity starting kind of end of March. Um, and then just a couple days after Mercury retrogrades back into Pisces, Neptune moves from Pisces to Aries. So just, you know, if everybody can kind of get this in their mind, you know, here is the Aries Pisces boundary, and we had the nodes move from Aries back into Pisces, and then we had
uh-huh,
Mercury and Venus move from Pisces to Aries, and then they retrograded back from Aries into Pisces. And then as they are
uh-huh,
retrograding back into Pisces, Neptune is moving from Pisces to Aries. So it's like if this is an
right,
intersection, it's a very crowded intersection. It is like the crowded intersection of 2025. Everything is like going back and forth over this one boundary between signs. So this is the first time Pisces or Neptune will have been in Pisces in over 100 years. So
oh
none of us has
wow,
any experience with Neptune and Pisces. Um,
right, okay,
so yeah, we are all going to collectively see what this looks like. It will be really important in April to be mindful because again, Neptune is going to retrograde out of Aries and back into Pisces. But this
mhm,
time when Neptune is in Aries, we're going to see what the next 14-ish years of Neptune in Aries is going to look like. So we want to be really
mm,
mindful now because this is going to be the first taste of some energy we'll be sort of iterating over and working through over the next 14 years. So make
mm,
notes in your calendar. This is a good month to journal. Even if you don't normally journal, April is a good month to journal. Just so we know what our next 14 years, what some of that energy is going to look like. If we think about Neptune and Pisces, Neptune is viewed as the modern ruler of Pisces. Neptune is very strong in Pisces. Um, there are a lot of positive things with Neptune and Pisces as a result. There are some downsides. And I think typically by the time Neptune, because it's the planet of dreams and fantasies, some of which are unrealistic, by the time Neptune reaches the end of a sign, most of us are kind of disillusioned with wherever Neptune is, and we're kind of ready for some new energy. You know, this is the problem with sort of having the most idealistic vision of something. Reality never lives up to that. And then when reality doesn't live
right,
up to that and you give it 14 years, we're all just kind of disillusioned and we're like, this is not as good as it looked in my head, you know? So there is this sense of um, uh, Neptune and Pisces. This last 14 years, this is when astrology became really big. Tarot became really big. Everybody sort of became part of the witch or wizard community. Everybody wanted to do magic. Um, there
right,
absolutely were astrologers and esoteric workers and healers before that, but it became like Instagram pop famous,
Yeah.
over this last 14
Yeah.
years with Neptune in Pisces. Pisces is a deeply spiritual sign that's focused on cosmic consciousness, the metaphysical rather than the physical. So for those of us interested in the esoteric stuff, this has been really fun. The downside of that is, and like Christy, you and I had we did a YouTube live several months ago about like
Mhm.
false healers, and
Yeah.
the danger of like everybody wants to do it is some might be doing it not for the right reasons, some might be doing it only because it's really popular, or they're hoping to make money off of it. When
Yeah.
almost no one is an astrologer and it's really weird and fringe, the people who are doing it only because they love it, which has not been true over the
Yeah.
last 14 years. So as Neptune moves
Right.
out of Pisces, I honestly expect that some of the people in sort of the esoteric spaces, maybe witch covens, astrology communities,
Mhm.
some of those people are going to fall away, because it's just not as popular anymore. But that might be good. It's sort of those of us who really, want to be part of this journey will still be here, and we'll be
Yeah.
left with kind of the other like minded people. So, in the same way that Neptune
Right.
in Pisces romanticizes, the spiritual, the esoteric, witches, astrology, all of magic, all of that, Neptune in Aries romanticizes the hero archetype. You
Mm.
know, they want to be viewed as, oh, you saved my life. I can't believe you did this for me. You made this big sacrifice for me. Yeah, you fought this
Right.
battle for me. So there's going to be more of that, sort of the
Mhm.
romanticization. Probably not a word, but romanticizing that. And
Hey,
so it
it's a
is
word now.
it is now. We invented it. Um, and what always happens when Neptune first moves into a sign is we approach something with the most possible, idealistic expectations. Um, so one thing I would caution everyone about, especially because we have so much happening in these early degrees of Aries and so much moving from Pisces to Aries, it is important not to romanticize conflict too much, not to romanticize battles or wars or, us versus them, or I win by putting somebody else down. Um, um, because this is the kind of energy of people who want to be, war generals, or people who want to, have a YouTube channel where they're cutting other people down, in the name of fairness or goodness. This really is
Being
the
right.
energy of, the noble warrior. And whenever you have a warrior, you have to have someone or something they're fighting. So,
Right.
and some of that can be good, like for example, if we have felt like we've been walked all over, with all of the outer planets in these yin signs, this is a time for us to stand up for ourselves, for other people, and to be a
Mhm.
noble warrior. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, finding that good balance line, um, yeah, with everything moving into Aries, it's just going to feel so easy, I think, for a lot of us to almost demonize others, whether it's other groups, other individuals, other countries. And yeah, it's
Right.
important to kind of keep all of that balanced. Yes, we want to be a hero, we want to do the right thing. But again, kind of like
Yeah.
with that Mars and Cancer energy, honestly, Mars in Cancer is not that dissimilar from Neptune in Aries. We've got the watery Neptune, the watery Cancer, the fiery Aries, the fiery
Right.
Mars. It's really important if you're going to go be a noble warrior that you're pointed at the right enemy. Otherwise, you may end up just hurting yourself or others you didn't mean to.
Yeah.
So, keeping all of that in
And I
mind.
and I
Yeah, go
think
ahead.
too, guys, we are going to continue on our archetypal studies. So now knowing this, we will make sure to take a look at the hero archetype, because there is an
Ah,
archetype to that and what that looks like. And then as you were talking, we've also got some tarot cards that are resonant with this, right? Like the Emperor and those kind of things. So we can talk about
yeah.
this energy and what it looks like on the healthy side and what it looks like on that unhealthy side. And in the in the reading that I did this morning, for the like overall advice, we had the Five of Swords and the Five of Cups, and it's like, okay, it was that same kind of thing.
Mm,
Like, at what cost are you getting to where you're going? Are you walking on somebody? Is somebody walking on you? And I use the example from The Devil Wears Prada because, of course, I did.
I
But
love The
where
Devil
it
Wears
was
Prada.
like, you know, where the Miranda character was, she tells the Anne Hathaway character, you have to do this. And it's this really crappy thing to the Emily Blunt character. And she's like, I can't do it. She goes, well,
Mm,
do you want this? And she ends up doing it. And so it's that kind of energy. So again, even inadvertently, guys, Karina and I did not, I promise you, we did not talk about what these energies looked like. Like, I had no clue what this, I'm learning it all with you guys. But it's interesting how energies are showing up astrologically, they're showing up in tarot, they're really showing up. So, and like Karina said, really, really, you guys journal, because these are years of our lives. This isn't like Mercury
mm.
retrograde where we've got 3 weeks and we can kind of like, you know, kind of
Skate by.
cowgirl up and tough our way through it. This is like 14 years. So we've got to learn how to navigate that. So I just think this is so interesting too, about how I knew nothing about this. You knew nothing about the tarot readings that I did. And as you're talking about it, I'm like, that came
It
up.
Yeah, which again is what I love about it almost doesn't matter which esoteric
Yeah,
thing you pursue. The energies we're tapping into, they're all the same energies. There's a
yeah, yeah.
universal element to them. Yeah, I love that so much.
Yes.
So by early April, April 7th, Mercury goes direct at 26 Pisces. April 12th, Venus goes direct at 24 Pisces. So again, they really retrograded at the same spot. They went back into Pisces. They went direct at the same spot, and now they're going to be moving out of Pisces. Um, so yeah, just it's very interesting to me. They typically don't line up that closely, but it's like they're almost degree by degree on top of each other, throughout their retrograde processes. So I do think there will be some interesting, sort of combinations of like maybe relationship things and Mercury things, so maybe like, a friend sort of messes up our itinerary. So our flight, we miss our flight, or, things where we're kind of marrying the themes of travel,
Right.
communication with relationship, art, connection. So we'll see what that exactly looks like. It will be interesting. You typically don't get that. Um, on April 17th, Mars moves back into Leo. This is not Mars is not quite out of its retrograde shadow yet, but honestly, I feel like this really marks the beginning of the end for the whole retrograde cycle, because Mars is officially out of Cancer, done with Cancer. Yes, it still has to move through the first 6 or 7 degrees of Leo before it's fully out of its shadow.
Mhm.
But I'm sort of internally viewing Mars's move into Leo as like sort of the end of the retrograde, the pre-end,
Okay.
the final closing credits of the Mars
Right,
retrograde
right.
story. So by April 17th, we will be there. It will have taken us a while to get there. Um, on May 24th, Saturn moves into Aries. So Saturn is in Pisces. Again, we talk about how every single thing is moving over that crowded intersection.
Mm,
So Neptune, the month before, moved from Pisces to Aries. May 24th, Saturn moves from Pisces to Aries and promptly moves right on top of Neptune, which is still in the first degree or two of Aries. So not only do we get, both of these planets changing signs, but this is the closest they've been in a long time, probably 34, probably more like 40 years. Um, and so, Saturn and Neptune together, it's just strange energy. It's not bad, it's just strange. Saturn wants firm boundaries, clear commitments, disciplined work, process-oriented steps to get there, delayed gratification. And Neptune is just like, we are all one. Who even cares about time or space or to-do lists? Who even cares about those things? So just really, really interesting bringing these two together at the very first degree of Aries. And the very first degree of Aries is an incredibly powerful degree as well. It's the first degree of the entire zodiac, all 360 degrees, the very first degree. So yeah, we're bringing together two very odd energies that don't normally play in the sandbox well together. And they are both in Aries. Neither one of them does very well in Aries. Neptune certainly is not a warrior, and Saturn is too slow moving and methodical and deliberate to be a warrior. So we have this merging of three very different energies. It's sort of like the archetype of like the disciplined, steady, reliable worker, and the warrior hero, and the disconnected dreamer. We're sort of bringing them all together, starting in late May. So again, this isn't bad energy, but it's just like, if you have a birthday party and these three archetypes show up, you're like, I wonder what they're going to find to talk about. Right? And so it's a little bit
you
like
get
that.
The popcorn and
yes, this is definitely like, we get the popcorn, we watch this show play out. Because these are three incredibly different energies, it's really hard to predict exactly what these are going to look like together. This is where, again, the journaling is really important because Saturn and Neptune are going to be together in Aries for the next 3 years. And Neptune is going to be in Aries for the next 14 years. So this is the preview of what this energy is going to look like. And for each one of us, I think this is going to look pretty different. Energies always look a little bit different for different individuals, but especially when you have three totally different energies coming together like this, I think we're all going to feel this in kind of a different way. So yeah, please journal, definitely be writing in your journal by end of May so that you have a sense of what the next 3 years and the next 14 years will look like. It's also worth calling out that Saturn is exalted in Libra, which is the opposite sign to Aries. So Saturn is in its fall in Aries. Planets in their fall are not less powerful. They're just trickier to deal with. And so Aries can actually gain a lot from Saturn energy. If you take that go get 'em, fearless, courageous Aries energy and combine that with the strong will, discipline, and dedication of Saturn, you can go really far. So again, there's a lot of ways to use these as complementary energies, but it will be important for all of us. This will almost feel like a three-way tug of war getting into late May. And so the most helpful way we can approach it is really think about not how to defeat Saturn and move Saturn out of the way, or move Aries out of the way, or move Neptune out of the way, but how to really use the strengths of all of them. And I think about this a lot because I've spent time as a people manager, and you actually don't want a team made up of all the same kind of person. You actually want different
Right.
people with different energies and different skill sets. And that probably means they're going to argue more because they're not just fully aligned on everything. They don't have the same perspective, but you'll get a better product at the end of it. And I even think, Christy, about like your and my collaborations where I just don't have the artistic bent at all. And I feel like you bring all of that. And I'm so grateful. And it's like the last thing I would want is to be doing these kind of sessions with someone exactly like me. It's like we want balanced energy. But
Yes.
yeah, just, everybody keeping in mind that, sometimes not with Christy and me, not with Christy and me at all, but sometimes those opposing energies and opposing perspectives can lead to conflicts because you're like, I think the artistic part is very important. What is wrong with this person over there who like isn't even
Right.
trying on the artistic side? So, but yeah, if we can kind of look at it as less like, who wins and more just like, hey, we want to incorporate all of the great elements of Neptune, Saturn, and Aries and use their beautiful side to balance out, like Neptune by itself has no boundaries, has no deadlines,
Mhm.
has no sense of time. Neptune with Saturn absolutely is going to understand those things. It's going to feel frustrating for Neptune because Neptune doesn't want to care about time. But, it's sort of like that actually is a good energy if we can have the dreaming vision
Yeah.
fantasy of Neptune with clear timelines, you know, to do lists, disciplined steps. So I think as we
Yeah.
get into May, um, the energy just changes very dramatically. So much stuff is passing back and forth between that Pisces Aries boundary. I feel like there's such a positive manifestation of it, but we just need to let it meld together instead of trying to like shut one out and be like, I don't want Neptune. I just want to be doing Saturn, or I just want to be the noble warrior
Right.
Aries and I don't want Neptune around. It's like, no, we have to merge all of those or I think it's going to be pretty tricky. If one wins
Right.
in any of our lives or on a larger community or collective level, I think it's going to be, yeah, really tricky and not very fun.
Yeah. That's a good point that you bring up too, is that, we can everybody brings something different. And so if you look at these energies as people or archetypes, which is why we're going to continue talking about archetypes, it might help you to integrate that a little bit more, because I will tell you, me on my own wouldn't have come up with the tarot class the way that Karina did. Like, she came up with the outline. Me, I would have been like, where are we starting? Let's start in the middle. Let's just jump off this cliff. But, so there is that benefit to those more structured things.
Yeah.
And so, seeing that. So as I go back, because I'm going to rewatch this and take all the notes, we will talk about these archetypes, and we'll talk about them before we get to where we need them, so that we have an understanding of what do they look like and how do they work. And this is why I'm excited to do this, because then also I know, okay, in May this is what's coming for me, right? Like, I don't
Hmm.
mean it's coming for me like that, but like, this is what's going on. Because then,
Yeah.
we have a better idea, and we can kind of ebb and flow a little bit easier if we're like, all right, it's going to be a little
Yeah.
tricky for these few months, and I kind of know that, but look, I've already prepared for it back here on this end. So by the time you get to it, it's not, I mean, I'm sure it will probably be jarring and shocking, but it's not going to be as jarring and shocking as if you had no clue it was coming. At least that's how I found it
Yeah,
in my life
a
to be.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And I feel like I cannot stress enough to people um, that this is one way astrology is just unbelievably valuable. I mean, like, for example, of course, like I was shocked during the pandemic and, the lockdowns and everything, like everybody else
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
But I knew the astrology of March 2020 was freaking crazy. And
Mhm.
astrologers have been talking about it
Right.
for the previous decade. looking at like, yeah, what is going to happen in March 2020? Because there's some giant stuff
Yeah.
happening. We've got a huge pile up of planets in Capricorn, Pluto and Saturn together. That could look pretty tricky. Um, and
Right.
so, yes, and so, when it did happen, I was surprised, but I wasn't shocked. And I feel like
Right.
for a lot of people where it just came out of a clear blue sky, it was so much more difficult. Whereas I had even, started kind of setting a little money aside, and I was just like, I don't know what this is going to look like, but I kind of want to be
Right.
prepared, whatever that looks like. And so, astrology is
Right.
just so helpful. I didn't know it was going to be a pandemic, but I knew it was going to be something that was going to have some big
Right.
economic repercussions. And so, again, it's
Mhm.
like just seeing the energies. It's just like with a weather forecast, where if it says it's going to, thunderstorm and lightning, and like, Christy, you've been dealing with a snowstorm. If you look at the weather report and it says giant snowstorm and icy roads, you're like, you know what? Maybe I won't be doing a 12-hour drive during that time. Maybe I'll just park and, kind of
Right.
see what happens. So it
Yes,
really is,
yes, yes.
we can't change all of the energy, especially at like the worldwide level. We can't change something like COVID, but just knowing
Right.
what's coming, so much of the anxiety we all feel is because we have no idea what's coming. So this is one of the things
Yeah,
I love the most about astrology. And I
me
definitely, going
too.
into 2025, I'm prepping for how do I want to best use these energies. There are ways I personally want to use Saturn, Neptune in Aries. I want to use that energy. I want to harness it, but I'm very cautious of, yeah, what that looks like if I don't use it well. And I just try to, use Saturn in Aries to go to war or something, so please, everybody, use this knowledge. It really
Mm,
helps the overall anxiety level in all of our lives to have some sense of the energies coming. That was
yes.
such a long rant. I just feel so strongly about this.
No, 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 no. I mean, it's true though. Like, and it's even, I mean, it's helped me so much just knowing the astrology of like, okay, this is where I'm at. This is what this looks like. Kind of like a good example was the storm. I was like, maybe it won't be that bad. Maybe it won't be that bad. I'm like, oh, it's going to be that bad. And then we were snowed in for like 3 days. And
Yeah.
even now, looking at it, the way that we were going to go, like maybe we can't go that way. Maybe now we have to go a different way. And we definitely have
Mm,
to be out of here by Friday because there's more snow coming in on Friday. But now, we're kind of going through the Midwest. And so now I'm like, all right, before it was like, I just got to get through Missouri and Kansas, and then I'll be good. I'll be down into Oklahoma. I'll be fine. And then it's supposed to snow in Oklahoma, and our RV is 40 feet long, and it's 15,000
yeah.
pounds, and it's, I don't know, like 10 or 12 feet high. And I'm in a Corvette. And so, that changes things. It doesn't mean that it won't happen. It just means we have to be a lot more mindful. And so now I'm like, okay, well, do we need to go down further? And now I'm like, all right, so I've got to get through Missouri and Oklahoma. And then I'm like, hallelujah, amen, prayer fingers, Texas. I ain't never been so happy to see that state in my life. And I'm just preparing for sunny and 60. But again, it's kind of like that. It's a forecast so that we know, okay, well,
Yeah.
we can't leave on this day. Originally we were going to leave tomorrow. Now we're like, okay, we really got to try to hopefully be out of here Wednesday, Thursday. A lot of places are going to get some snow. So, like, what does that look like? How far can we drive?
Mm,
So, if you look at this as a weather forecast and you treat it like that, you might find it's way more helpful because maybe you're looking at it and you're like, what do I do with this? Um, if you treat it like that, then, you know, how would you navigate that? Kind of how I
mm.
use it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It would have been so much more difficult if you wouldn't have known the storm was coming at all and you got surprised by it.
Yeah.
At least this way you got to plan a little
Oh,
bit.
yeah.
So even though, we've talked about there's a lot of, jarring energy with all these planets, a revolving door back and forth between Pisces and Aries. On June 5th, Venus moves into Taurus. This is such a lovely placement. Um, Venus rules Taurus. There's a, Taurus is so grounded and earthy and stable. Venus in Taurus is kind of like, the artist sitting on a hillside painting an idyllic landscape quietly. There's just, this is going to be a beautiful creative energy, different than Venus in Pisces. Venus in Pisces is more cosmic, universal, bigger picture. Venus in Taurus is more like a little more solitude or sitting quietly with friends, but it's less outgoing. So it will feel like a beautiful, yeah, sort of like a time of creativity, but you won't feel the need to have to put it on display or share it with others. Even just
Mhm.
the creation of it um, will be enough. And Taurus is also so nature oriented. So you may find yourself, inspired to walk outside in bare feet or, yeah, literally take whatever your artistic supplies are and go outside. Um, by June or July, the weather should be pretty good in most places as well, so just go outside and do some of your art and enjoy the birds singing, the leaves on the trees. Um, and Venus is in Taurus from June 5th to July 4th. So just a wonderful, it's a nurturing time. Soak all of that gorgeousness in. Also, so on June 4th, Venus moves into Taurus. On June 9th, Jupiter moves from Gemini to Cancer. I love this. Historically in astrology, Venus and Jupiter are known as the lesser benefic and the greater benefic, but they both just bring beautiful energy. Venus rules Taurus. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. We basically have these two planets that bring gorgeous things in gorgeous signs for them that they are so comfortable in. So again, as we're starting to look into June, July, there are, again, late May 24th, Saturn moves into Aries on top of Neptune in the first degree of Aries. Yeah, there's some tricky energy there we all have to deal with, but there is some beautiful, nurturing energy coming after that to kind of help us integrate and make whatever changes we want to make and adjust to whatever shifts have happened around us. And Jupiter in Cancer, Cancer is a very intuitive sign. It's a very nurturing sign. Um, and Jupiter wants to bring goodness. So, I often think of like Jupiter in Cancer as almost like a placement for a healer, for example, something
Mhm.
nurturing and good bringing. Um, I'm trying to remember. I should fact check myself on this, but I think I'm trying to remember, but I know there have been some historical medical advances that have been made during Jupiter and Cancer, where antidotes are found for something, or big medical breakthroughs have happened. So I do really feel like
Mhm.
Jupiter in Cancer is a doctor, but who has the knowledge, has the remedy you need, but also has that Cancer nurturing bedside manner, which not every knowledgeable doctor has. So yeah, I just really feel like there's a lot of supportive energy coming following sort of some of the big fireworks that start in March,
Mhm.
go through May. So yeah, we'll have some time and some gorgeous energies coming to help us kind of ride out those waves and adapt to those changes. So June and July, even though I think there will be a lot of after effects from Saturn and Neptune moving into Aries, um, take time for yourself, take time to really nurture yourself. Don't lose sight of some of the bigger picture goals. You know, things are still stabilizing, with these planets moving from Pisces to Aries. So don't assume that anything you see is going to be the way it always is. Take it as a preview, but not as a everything is going to look exactly like this. Oftentimes, we see some of the biggest changes when a planet first enters a sign. And then we sort of get like the smaller, waves that ripple out for the remainder of the planet's time in that sign. So, um, yeah, I think what I'm trying to say is Venus in Taurus, Jupiter in Cancer in early June. Love it. amazing. We'll probably need it slash want it by then with all of these other big changes, all of this young, fiery external energy. We will be ready for some internal, nature time, me time with Taurus and Cancer.
Oh, beautiful.
So much. All right. So, okay, there's a couple more things. Interestingly, we are getting towards the end of most of the huge changes for 2025. So our year is very front loaded. And then there's quite a bit of like, okay, what am I going to do with this? And okay, this is a preview. How am I going to address this energy for the rest of, the 14 years?
Right.
So let's see, trying to be very ruthless and not, talk about absolutely everything. On the 4th of July, Neptune moves retrograde. So we talked about how Neptune moved into Aries. It's going to move back into Pisces. That's worth knowing because starting in July, now like Neptune is looking backwards at where it came from. It's not looking forwards anymore. So our preview period sort of ends a little bit and we start to be like, oh, we actually have to deal with some stuff before we're fully ready to move into this new energy. And so starting in July, there's a little bit of like, oh yeah, I do want to move to that new city, but I actually need to pack everything and downsize my house and make all my plans. And, it's a little bit like, yeah, we've seen what we're looking towards and what we're trying to accomplish, but now we're trying to like, yeah, now as Neptune starts moving retrograde, it's like, okay, but what do we have to finish up and clean up before we can really move fully into the new world? 2 days later, on July 6th, Uranus moves into Gemini. This, I'll be totally honest, friends, I don't know how I feel about this. A lot of astrologers are really focused on, the giant backup happening at that, Aries Pisces boundary, which I am too. That is crazy. But Uranus in Gemini, in particular with the US, it has a big history behind it. So Uranus was in Gemini during our Revolutionary War when the US first became a nation. Uranus was in Gemini again during the Civil War. Uranus was in Gemini again when the US first became involved in World War II. Now, that does not mean I can, Christy, it's like I can see your face. You're like, that does
we're not going to war.
Right. We only have 3 historical data points for this because the US is actually not that old of a country. And Uranus it takes 84 years for it to cycle the zodiac. But Uranus in Gemini, Uranus is that planet of like freedom and rebellion and break free from things. And and Gemini, Uranus in Taurus, which is where it's been for the last 7 years, Taurus moderates Uranus a lot. Taurus does not want to be a rebel. Taurus does not like anything sudden. Gemini does. Gemini is the mutable air sign. It's sort of the most airy and fast moving of the air signs. And we have seen in the US's history sort of this like desire for freedom and rebellion associated with Uranus and Gemini. Certainly the Revolutionary War, the US was trying to be free, from Britain. The Civil War, the South was trying to be free from the North. That also correlated with, the slavery being, ended and slaves being freed. So there's some really good stuff. Sometimes it's like, no, there is real oppression. You need to rebel. You need to be free. So, and I think what's interesting about Revolutionary War, Civil War, World War II, and certainly World War II, there was a big sense of like, we need to be free from like a world dictator, someone who aspires
Right,
to be a
from a
world
tyrant.
dictator. There is this sense of, yeah, I'm certainly not saying it's going to be war, but I think,
Right,
if
right,
we look
right.
at the deeper patterns, it's that sense of where are we not free and we've been dealing with
Mhm,
it, and that's starting to chafe.
mhm,
Because wherever that
mhm.
is, we're going to be feeling that Uranus like need to break out of those chains. Um, and we'll be feeling that individually, we'll be feeling that collectively. I think, um, if we look at all three of those past events, and again, history is weird. Nobody alive right now has direct knowledge of those events, but there is the sense that very good things happened as a result of all of
Yeah.
those things. Um,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
so, I think, again, we talked about how so much in 2024 there were these feelings of sort of being stuck and moving back and forth and spinning the wheels and back and forth and spinning the wheels and not really
Right.
moving forward. I do think Uranus and Gemini, it will move things forward. There is no way it will not move things forward. Um, and exactly what the shape of that looks like, yeah, impossible to know right now. But I am pretty encouraged that, if we go back and look at Uranus and Gemini in the past, not even just in the US, it seems to have a particular affinity for, big things in the US, but there really is a sense of sometimes the chains need to be broken. Sometimes,
Yeah.
you're stuck and you need to move forward. And so I'm
Mhm.
very optimistic for a longer term what Uranus and Gemini looks like. But I do
Right.
feel like many times when we're in that rebellious, I mean, even just think about a rebellious teenager, right? Like they
Mhm.
probably make some poor choices just in the name of being free from, mom or dad or caretakers, um, which they may look
Right.
back on later and be like, yeah, I probably could have done something a little better there. Maybe mom and dad knew a couple of things, that I could have taken into account.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so, the other thing is that Uranus is very associated with technology. Gemini is
Mhm.
too. Gemini is very, very. It was good to see you, Teresa. Moons to Wisdom. Love that channel. Um, yeah, so there is this energy of um, Uranus is very technology oriented. Gemini is very technology oriented. Gemini is also very strongly associated with like it's ruled by Mercury, the messenger of the gods. It's associated with travel, movement.
Mhm.
Um, again, I'm not trying to get too far into like actual predictions. We don't know exactly what any of this will
Right.
look like, but I could see things with,
Oh, right. Sure.
like space tourism, um, more space travel. There's already so much being done with drones. Maybe in the future, maybe as Uranus moves into Gemini, there will be more drones spying on other drones, and maybe that's the form of what the conflict will look like. Um, but there
Right.
and certainly Pluto moved into Aquarius, and we saw the advent of artificial intelligence. We may see that used more in travel communication ways with Uranus and Gemini. Um, I know they're now doing like robo taxis in San Francisco. Tesla has these,
Oh, wow.
Waymo has these that are driverless taxis. I know it's crazy, but they have them. You can go to San Francisco and get one. And so there may be
Oh,
more of that.
wow.
That certainly feels to me like a preview of, Uranus, the rebel, the, person interested in technology and driving things forward in Gemini, the sign of communication, travel, moving from one space to another. So I think this is just going to look very interesting. Um,
Mhm.
Again, impossible to know exactly how yet. And Uranus will move back into Taurus. It will retrograde back into Taurus. So again, this is sort of a preview. We'll see a little bit about what this looks like. We won't see the even the really beginning. Maybe we'll see the beginning of the story. Definitely not the middle or the end of the story. So again, journals so that we can all get a sense and keep a record of how this is impacting each of us personally.
Right. Right.
I feel like I should pause briefly. If there's anything you want to add, Christy, I am just like, I can talk about all of this
You know,
forever. But
I think it's beautiful though, because if you look back at those particular things, you know, that you mentioned, the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, World War II, yes, those were big upheavals that, you know, really shook everything. But like you said, out of it did come good. You know, there did
Mhm.
come this sense of like a whole nation was created, a
Mm,
whole um uh what's the word I'm looking for? Like the Jewish people were free,
mm,
you know, like
yeah. Mhm,
we had these people that were freed from these oppressors that, you know, unnecessarily.
mm.
And sometimes I do think, and you know, I mean, I'm an Aquarius and I am like, to hell with the rules, let's go, you know. Sometimes you do need that, because when you've kind of marched along, you forget that you have that choice to rebel.
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
know, and there can be this sense of freedom and like, I am doing this for the greater good. And so I want to encourage everybody, like Karina said, like it doesn't have to be scary, and the US is not that old, but
Mm,
look at how you can play your part to make it better. I mean, if this is
mm,
coming some way, if this big change is coming
mhm.
some way, we talk about it in tarot. You know, if you've got this tower moment in front of you, okay, how do you make it the best? Well, I'll tell you how I'm going to make it the best. I'm cleaning out my closet, so I got room for all those Louis Vuitton shoes I want. I'm just going to stock it full of that. I'm getting rid of my tennis shoes, and I'll just wear those damn shoes all the time. But you guys, I'm kidding. But that's how you just kind of look at that, right? Is I know that's a very kind of playful, silly way, but there is something to it. It's like, okay, if this is coming, how do I navigate it, and what do I want my part in it to be? And if it's kind of this warrior thing anyway, like, you know, go be the cool one that, you know, has this great idea to you know. And if it's around technology, I mean, maybe there's some, you know, because I feel it can kind of go both ways. You know, like I
Mm.
can see things where it's really cool, because guys, the song, the intro and outro song, I wrote the lyrics to that song. I did not sing it, I did not play it, that is all AI. um
Mhm.
but it gave life to my lyrics, so it's cool. Otherwise I would still be waiting for that. You know, it took us 13 tries. I'd still be waiting for the
Yeah.
first, you know, evolution of that. So there is positive. So, you know, try to maybe see that, um or I don't know, stock up, on your canned foods.
Yeah,
How to make soup,
yeah.
how to grow mushrooms.
Well, yeah, again, I certainly don't wanna be alarmist, and I certainly would not suggest that, "Oh, this has to be a war." Again, we only have a relatively short history of, um, the US in its current form since it was founded, as the nation it is today. But yeah, I do encourage everybody, um, there is a really beautiful side to this. If we're stuck anywhere in any way, this is our chance to break free. And sometimes if we're kind of the frog in the pot of water where the heat is going up slowly, slowly, we don't even realize how uncomfortable and unhappy
Yeah,
we are. But with Uranus and Gemini, we realize it. We realize it enough to do the hard thing of jumping out of the pot and making the big change.
right,
Um, and I honestly
right.
feel like of course I see that this is coming, but I also even feel like in society, I'm talking to so many people where they're so tired of feeling stuck. They're so tired of feeling like
Mhm.
things can't move forward and they're just sort of living life on this endless repeat. So, I feel like there are, yeah, some really amazing things about not only Uranus into Gemini, but all of the planets all of the outer planets being in these yang signs of like, all right, the time has come. Let's get it moving. Let's be the change we want to see in the world.
Yeah.
Let's fix everything that's
Yes.
broken. So this is definitely a year for that. Okay. I feel like I need to speed up a little bit, but don't worry. Our biggest things we've talked
No,
about.
you're good.
July
You're good.
12th, Saturn is gonna turn retrograde. So Neptune already turned retrograde in early July. By July 12th, Saturn turns retrograde, and then both of them are going to kind of retrograde together back into Pisces.
Mm.
August 31st, Saturn moves back into Pisces. And then September 6th and 21st, we have our two eclipses. And what do I want to say about these eclipses? So again, we talked about how the moon nodes changed signs. So these eclipses are going to be taking place in a different area of the chart, in the Pisces Virgo axis. Thinking about everything that has come already in the year that we've already talked about, there is such an opportunity with both Pisces and Virgo. They want to help and they want to serve.
Mm.
You know, Virgo wants to help you fix your washing machine, and Pisces wants to help you on your spiritual journey, but they both really are helper signs. And so I think this is going to be, as there are all of these changes and so many shifts, these eclipses in September are really going to bring an opportunity to come together, to really find community. When things are going okay, I think a lot of us can just be siloed and, you know, not even really be looking out and around. But yeah, when the energies are so crazy, we can actually bond with others over this. Like, we all, to some degree,
Mhm.
bonded over COVID. We were like, yeah, remember when we had to be at home and all locked up by ourselves? It was really hard. And, you know, and so this will be sort of that same bonding energy, but it won't be isolated. The way COVID, it was harder to bond, even though it was a bonding type of event, because we had to be isolated in our homes. With
Right.
all of the energy in 2025, we will be able to get together in communities and share things, share our different experiences and the way we're handling the energies. And especially, again, Jupiter is in Cancer for all the rest of the year. So there is this sense of, uh, yeah, helpfulness, nurturing, supportiveness, to be found in community. So yeah, the lunar and solar eclipses, I think at least for this Pacific time zone, it's September 6th and September 21st. It might be the day before that, depending on your time zone. But yeah, the one on September 6th, that is a total eclipse, a total lunar eclipse. Yeah, and again, being open to new perspectives, looking with your inner eye rather than your outer eye. And, you know, it, with everything coming in the year so far, there haven't been a lot of opportunities to really sit and integrate. But I feel like in September, there is going to be that opportunity to, okay, what have I learned from all of this? What do I want to change? Has this given me any realizations, you know, that I want to take into my life? So yeah, I see September as being a very, I think there will still be beginnings and endings. Eclipses always correspond to those. But I think for those of us approaching this year mindfully, those can be more deliberate, intentional beginnings and endings, based on
Mm.
everything we've experienced so far in the year. What do we want to change based on everything we're seeing? So I'm kind
Yeah.
of excited for those.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Like,
What else? Yes, please. If there's anything you want to say, Christy, I'm like condensing
oh,
my notes.
no, no, no. I was just kind of checking out this as you're talking here and looking, I'm thinking back to my personal reading and the readings that I did for everybody for the year. And it's just so in line. And I love that. So I really do hope that you guys do put this in your day planners, put it in your journals. You know, I'm honestly going to write it in the front page of my journal. I'm going to put it in my day planner. Um, and I'm even going to build some shows on the channel around it to help us with that. So you can really use this. I'm most excited to, like I said, go back and write it down and really just put it everywhere and be like, okay, how can we prepare for this? How can we do this? And of course, you know me, I like that rebel energy a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like that does resonate with you. All right, so there are just a couple of things I want to call out, and then I'll kind of paint the big picture of sort of what I see 2025 as a summary, just to kind of pull everything together. Okay, so we talked about how August 31st, Saturn moves back into Pisces. Um, October 22nd, Neptune moves back into Pisces. So again, we've got that super crowded intersection, but instead of them going into Aries, they're
Right.
retrograding back out of Aries. Um, and what's interesting is if you look at like a zodiac wheel and you look at basically Neptune and Saturn are, in the first like degree or so of Aries for most of the year, retrograding back and forth over that point. Uranus
Mhm.
is in the very first degrees of Gemini, kind of retrograding back and forth over that point.
Mhm.
But we have this energy, like there's a sextile between those. So Uranus, the rebel, is sextiling um, Saturn and Neptune. I've like said too many planets names today. I'm just like, what are the planets names anymore? um, but yeah, there's this energy. There's a sense of like they're going to be very interconnected. So we already talked about how Saturn and Neptune together in Aries, the energy is a little bit weird. So we're going to have to see
Mhm.
what it looks like when those are together. Um, but then as we have Uranus moving into Gemini, this supportive 60-degree energy, it's not even just like we have Neptune, Saturn, and Aries. We also have that really closely sextiling Uranus in Gemini. So, in
Mm.
addition to the warrior archetype and the dreamer archetype and the disciplined archetype, we're adding in the rebel archetype who's
Oh,
supporting all of these characters. So again, there is just a lot going on. um,
right,
and
right.
as as Neptune and Saturn retrograde back into Pisces, Uranus retrogrades back into Taurus. So then instead of being in the first couple of degrees of the next sign, then they're all in the last few degrees of the previous sign. But again, they're still sextile. So, in the same way that Mercury
Interesting.
and Venus's retrogrades are moving together this year, Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus are moving into their new signs in a sextile, and then they're retrograding out of their new signs in a sextile. So, it's almost like 2025 is a year where the planets want to hang tight with each other. They're not all off doing
Right.
their own thing. They're moving
Mhm.
very similarly and closely. Um, so the year is going to, I'm trying to see if there's anything towards the end of the year around Thanksgiving. Saturn goes direct in Pisces, so it's going to head back towards Aries. December 9th, Neptune goes direct in Pisces, so it's going to go back towards Aries. Again, that intersection, Pisces Aries, is just the busiest
Right.
intersection of the year. And then we're going to end the year with Saturn and Neptune will be direct. Again, their eyes will be fixed on the future this time, moving back towards Aries. Uranus will still be retrograde. Jupiter will still be retrograde, but it's in Cancer, which is a nice place for it to be. But basically, the first several months of the year, up until about March, is really a buildup. a time for us to be creative, share with people, sort of prepare. Then as we look at like March through May or June, it's like total energetic shifts. We're going to have to see exactly what all of that looks like. Big energetic shifts.
Right.
And then there's sort of a recovery period with Venus in Taurus, Jupiter in Cancer, to kind of just say, how do I integrate all that? And then
Right.
all of those outer planets that have dipped their toes into the new sign go back into their old sign. So in that last quarter of the year, it's actually going to be more like cleaning up loose ends from the energy this year.
Mm.
So
Oh,
next
okay.
November and December is going to look more
Uh-huh.
similar to 2024 than it does to the rest of 2025. So for those,
Okay.
and I feel like I love how astrology and the planets do this, where they do their whole retrograde thing. They give us a chance to get used to things. All the planets go in. We get our
Right.
preview. We see what the energies are going to look like. Then
Right.
they move back into their old signs by the end of the year, so that we have a chance to be like, okay, what was that thing I experienced? How do I integrate it? What do I want my next 3, 6, 14, depending on which planet, Saturn, Uranus, or Neptune we're talking
Right.
about. How do we want to use this energy now that we've seen the preview
Mhm.
as we look into 2026 and beyond?
Right. Right.
I know we
This
talked
is
about a lot.
exciting. No, no, I am so excited. You know what? I'm like, okay, guys, you know me. When you talk about the rebel, I'm picturing me being like, here, here, go get you some fighting whatever, like go buy some sticks, go, and then you're kind of like over here, and then you're like over there, and I love it, and I love how you're saying how they want to stick together, because I think these past few years, at least for me, has felt very like I'm on my path doing my thing, and like Karina's over on your path doing your thing,
Mm,
and we're kind of doing the same thing, and we're walking side by side, and now I feel like maybe we get to get on the same path, and instead of like, hey, what are you doing over there, we're like, hey, I can say hi to you. Here, I made you a cup of tea. Let's go. And
yes.
although I know that it's not going to be completely that way, and that because I did see it even just in those readings that I did, where I mean, literally, I was like, okay, so just so that y'all know, like, this isn't just you. Uh, this is, the first one I did, I was like, okay. Second one I did, I was like, did I shuffle my cards right? The third one, I was like, okay, let me try a different deck. The fourth one, I was like, I'm cleansing everything.
This is,
And then I was like, no, this is it. Like, this is it. I have done
yeah,
everything to do. So I think it's, for me, even though I know it's got these bigger energies, it's a great way to pull in creativity, to pull in those archetypal energies, to really realize that we're not alone, to be a little rebellious because that is a little fun sometimes,
yes,
and but to also be able to, like sort ourselves out. We don't want to be,
yeah,
crazy warrior general, like take the hill at all costs.
yeah.
So I am actually really excited to see, to go back, because I wrote down the reading that I did for myself, and then I did a reading for Michael, and I'm gonna go back and I'm
Yeah.
gonna like line it all up and see, and be like, okay, but I am really excited to see where this goes, and I feel like it's bringing us together maybe a little bit more than we have been in the past years, because like you said, COVID, it was a thing, and it took us a long time to get out of that, and it's kind of like, okay,
Mhm.
now we're just kind of getting into this swing of things, but then there's a lot of other things going on. Like, you've seen Justin Trudeau was set to resign after 9 years.
Yeah,
So again, like, what does that look like, for our Canadian friends and for us? And
yeah,
so there is a, in economics, they call it the invisible hand of economics. So everything can kind of go sideways, and it really kind of doesn't
mm,
matter how sideways it goes, but there's this invisible hand of economics that comes over, and it writes it. You know what I mean? So it
mm,
just writes it, and I feel like this is maybe that writing of the, okay, here, you need this, you need that, here's this kind of
Mm.
energy, you know.
Yeah, I
So
like
it's
that.
kind of how
And
what
I
I
do
took
feel
from
like
it.
with yeah, I love that. And I do feel like, yeah, I keep coming back to the frog in the pot where,
Uh-huh.
you
Yeah,
know, I do
yeah,
feel like this is the year where all of us, whatever pots we are in individually or collectively that have been like the heat is going up and we're dealing with it and we're living with it. This is kind of a year for all of us to jump out of our pots. And again, it's scary
yeah,
because who knows what you're jumping out into? Who knows what's out there? In some ways, the safety of the pot feels better than the total unknown. But at the same time, we don't want to stay in the pot and just get boiled. So, it really does
right,
have that
right.
feel of, you know, yeah, that rising of the rebel within each one of us gives us the opportunity, like all amazing changes that have happened throughout history have happened because people sort of rebelled against the status quo, said some things were not okay, said we needed a better way. And this is one of those times. Um, but
Yeah,
which, is amazing and it's such an evolutionary opportunity. But of course, it's somewhat destabilizing because you are jumping out into the unknown to some degree. Um,
right,
yeah,
right.
but I feel like,
And
again, for some of us who really have been on the spiritual path, in some ways, this is sort of what we've been preparing for is like we want to move forward. We want to, engage with the universe on this journey. We want to make the world and ourselves better. Um, yeah, so much opportunity.
it doesn't necessarily, so the book, there's a book I wrote, it's called or I read, it's called What I Seen on the Way to the Revolution, and it's by Peggy Noonan. And who Peggy Noonan is, if
Mm.
you guys don't know, she was Reagan's um speechwriter. And but this isn't about Reagan, this is about her journey from, like going to college at like Berkeley or wherever she went, to becoming a journalist, to becoming the speechwriter for Reagan. And that just reminded me, like, sometimes I name things because it gives it more power. It kind of is like, this is that year of, this is, what I saw
Mm.
on the way to the revolution. Like, if you guys like political stories, go read it. It's great. She's great. It is a great book. It's not, it's political. She obviously, Reagan, she's got those leanings, um, but she's a good writer. But I listened to it on Audible, and it is a good book about her story, about how she got started, and she really thought it was going to be this one
Mm.
thing, and then it wasn't, and then she like struggled with like writing speeches for Reagan, and then then she got it, and then she was like completely shocked. And so it's a great story, but I feel like that's kind of the theme maybe of 2025, what I saw on the way to the
Mm.
revolution. What are we going to
I
see on our
yeah,
way to the revolution?
I love that. And again, I feel like, as we know that there are some changing energies coming in the greater world around us, it does give us the opportunity to approach them less with a knee-jerk reaction and more mindfully and intentionally. And I
Right.
feel like, where any of us fall into some of the, darker sides of change is when we haven't really set a strong intention and we kind of just fall into something.
Yeah.
So again, I'm really hopeful that for many of us, we'll be able to really, show up for the world in the way that it needs and take those next steps along our soul's journey. So I do feel like, yeah, there are just so many opportunities this year. They'll just be tricky,
Right.
to navigate. They won't be just like a walk
Right.
in the park. We will be doing our work, to figure out the best approaches. But for sure,
Well,
this is
but
sort of an
it's more meaningful.
epoch-defining time. It is more meaningful. Yes, I love that perspective.
Yeah. 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 I mean, like I said, like, what are you gonna say? I just love that. I don't know why that came into my mind. But that's kind of like, that's, I'm gonna write that down in my journal. That's gonna be my motto. What I saw on the way to the revolution at 49 years old. Well, I'm not 49 yet.
Well,
I will be next month. But, like, what did I see?
and
An old lady's view.
yeah, no, don't call yourself that. Young at heart, Christy, very, very young at
Right,
heart.
there we go.
And
Young at heart.
I think also keeping in mind that when we do this, you like look ahead for the energies of the year. Most years are not like this. Most years, there's a lot more status quo. Sometimes none of the outer planets are changing signs at all. So, those might be quieter years. We didn't talk at all about just normal new moons and full moons. There was too much to talk about just with everything changing signs. But
Right,
yeah, this
right.
is really our preparatory year. Um, where we get our trailer. And yeah, I'm so excited to hear how everybody navigates this and what, positive changes they make
Yes.
in their lives. And Christy, I know your channel is going to be here to help people navigate that throughout the year.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, and guys, we will talk about the moons and what that looks like. We're going to talk about the nodes. We're going to talk about all the things. I just wanted you guys to have a really good idea heading in, like what we were in for. Karina, thank you so much for coming
Oh, it's
on,
been so
sharing
fun.
all of this knowledge with us. This was so fun. You guys, if you didn't catch the stream this morning, Michael is the next job is in Arizona. So I may or may not go live tomorrow morning. I'm not sure. So kind of watch this space, watch the Facebook group. Make sure you've got that all for the notifications on. Hopefully we're traveling Wednesday or Thursday. We definitely need to be out of here by Friday. And so the next time that you see me, if I'm not on the road, I will be in Phoenix, Arizona, actually in Maricopa, but I'm going to be there. So um, this is how my life goes. If you're new to my channel, there's a lot of change that comes quickly for me. And it's like, hey, and it's what I tell people I collaborate with is like, this is what it looks like, but change at any moment. So stay tuned. If you don't see me tomorrow morning, it's probably because I'm packing up the RV. I will check in as I'm on the road. I should be back next week, full on ready to go. That job is supposed to take 2 weeks, but we were only supposed to be here 6 weeks, and that was back in September. So, so we know how that goes.
You're such a wild,
So,
free spirit, Christy. I love it.
I always, it's funny. Michael asked me one time, he's like, I know what your friends bring to you, but what do you bring to your friends? And I'm like, my life is so crazy that they just look at me and they're like, I'm not that. Like, I'm normal, and of course I'm joking, but there's always something going on in my life, always. So if you ever need to feel like your life feels normal, just check me out. Like, there's, I promise you, something going on, and they're just like, oh, bless it, bless her. We pray for her all the time. we pray for
We
things that we know are
appreciate
going to happen that we don't understand.
we appreciate all of the relational energy, the creative energy you bring to this space. You are a creator. This whole channel, you created.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, it's a ride. So I think on that note, guys, we're going to end it the way we always do. Go conquer your world as only you can. We'll be here to help you light the way.
When